I hired him on a Monday morning, and by Friday night, he was ordering me to lock my own cafe and leave with him. I should have been afraid. I should have called the police. But when Marcus stood there, this bald, tattooed stranger I'd known for 72 hours, and said, "Close early, come with me, trust me," something in his voice made me reach for my keys instead of my phone. He'd been so quiet those 3 days, efficient, careful with the espresso machine like his hands remembered what it meant to break things. I didn't know he'd been released from prison 8 weeks earlier. I didn't know about the time he'd lost, the mistakes that had covered his skin in ink and regret. But I knew this. When he looked past me toward the window, his jaw tight with recognition, I understood he was the only thing standing between me and whatever was waiting outside. You will feel so many emotions in this story of second chances and forbidden love. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. The morning Marcus Walker walked into my cafe, I was 3 months behind on rent and seriously considering selling my grandmother's espresso machine just to make it through winter. Pearl's Coffee House in Northeast Portland wasn't much. 12 tables, a temperamental heating system, and regulars who tipped in quarters. But it was mine. The only thing I'd ever built from scratch. The only thing that proved I was more than the girl who'd dropped out of art school and disappointed everyone who'd believed in her. So when this bald, heavily tattooed man pushed through my door at 7:15 on a Monday morning, resume in a plastic sleeve, I was already forming the word no in my mouth. I didn't need charity cases. I didn't need complications. I certainly didn't need someone whose appearance would make my elderly customers clutch their purses tighter. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he stood there, perfectly still, not trying to sell himself or explain the obvious gap in his employment history, not making excuses for the faded ink that crawled up his neck or the scar that cut through his left eyebrow. He just waited, patient, present, like he'd learned a long time ago that expectation only led to disappointment. "I'm a fast learner," he said simply, his voice rough but not aggressive. "I show up on time, I don't steal, and I need work." The honesty disarmed me. No embellishments, no promises he might not keep, just facts, delivered like someone who understood that his word was the only currency he had left. I should have asked for references, should have run a background check, should have done 1,000 responsible things that responsible business owners do. Instead, I heard myself say, "Can you start today?" Something flickered in his eyes, not quite hope, but maybe the shadow of it. "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am. I'm Claire. And if you break my espresso machine, you're fired." The corner of his mouth almost smiled. Understood. Marcus learned faster than anyone I'd ever trained. He memorized the drink recipes after one demonstration, understood the rhythm of morning rush without explanation, and moved through the cramped space behind the counter like someone who'd learned to make himself small, efficient, invisible when he needed to be. But what struck me most was his attention to detail. The way he noticed the wobbly table leg and fixed it during his break without asking. How he reorganized the supply closet so everything was accessible. The careful way he cleaned the steam wand after every use, like he understood that carelessness had consequences. By Tuesday afternoon, my regular customers were commenting on the improved service. By Wednesday, I realized I hadn't had to remake a single order or apologize for wait times. The cafe ran smoother than it had in months, maybe ever. But there was something else. Something I couldn't quite name. Marcus watched everything. Not in a creepy way. More like someone constantly calculating exits and threats. He positioned himself so he could see both the front door and the counter. When customers got loud or aggressive, he didn't react. But I noticed how he'd straighten slightly, how his hands would still on whatever he was doing, how his entire body became alert. On Wednesday afternoon, a delivery driver got aggressive about a tip, leaning over the counter, raising his voice at me. Before I could respond, Marcus simply stood up from where he'd been restocking cups. He didn't say a word, didn't threaten, just stood there, and something in his stillness made the driver back away, muttering apologies. After the man left, I asked, "Where did you learn to do that?" Marcus went back to stocking cups. "Do what?" "Make someone back down without saying anything." His jaw tightened. "Just something you pick up." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't push. Thursday was quiet. We fell into an easy rhythm, and I started to feel like maybe hiring him hadn't been a mistake. Maybe I'd actually made a good decision for once. Then Friday came. The day started normally. Morning rush, Afternoon lull, the usual pattern. But around 4 o'clock, I noticed Marcus kept glancing toward the window. His movements, usually fluid and efficient, became more deliberate, controlled, like he was forcing himself to appear calm. At 5:30 or 5, an hour before normal closing, he stopped wiping down the counter mid-motion and said, "You need to close early tonight." I looked up from counting the register, confused. What? He didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on something outside, eye-tracking movement I couldn't see. Close the cafe, lock the door, turn off the sign. Marcus, I can't just... Yes, you can. Now he looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my breath catch. Not anger. Fear. For me. Lock the door, turn off the sign, and come with me. I should have demanded an explanation. Should have refused. But 3 days of watching him, of seeing how he moved through the world with careful precision, of witnessing his quiet competence, had built something I didn't want to name. Trust, maybe. Or faith that someone who fixed wobbly tables and cleaned steam wands with such care wouldn't hurt me. My hands were shaking as I locked the register and reached for my keys. Marcus held the door open, his body angled to shield me from the street. As we stepped outside, he positioned himself between me and the silver sedan parked across the street, the one I'd seen there for the past 3 days but convinced myself meant nothing. "Who are you?" I whispered. He kept walking, his hand hovering near my back but not touching. "Someone who knows what it looks like when you're being hunted." The weekend after Marcus walked me to my car felt like living in a different reality. Saturday morning, I woke to 3 missed calls from unknown numbers and a text that made my blood run cold. "You looked pretty sleeping last night." My apartment was on the 2nd floor. The blinds had been closed. Whoever sent that message wanted me to know they'd been close enough to see inside, or wanted me to believe they had. Either way, the message was clear. I wasn't safe. I spent Saturday paralyzed, jumping at every sound, checking the locks obsessively, wondering if I should call the police. And report what? Uncomfortable feelings? A text message that could have been from anyone. I'd dated Ryan Mitchell for 8 months before I'd finally ended it 3 months ago, and he'd never quite accepted that decision. But Ryan was pushy, not dangerous. Wasn't he? Sunday morning, I forced myself to go to the corner market for groceries. I needed to feel normal, needed to prove that fear wouldn't control me. I was loading bags into my car when I saw him. Marcus, standing on the corner with a coffee in his hand, watching my building. My first instinct was anger. Was he stalking me too? But as I approached, I saw his posture wasn't predatory. It was protective, vigilant, like a guard dog who'd appointed himself without permission. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. He didn't apologize or make excuses. "You live alone." The question was so direct it took me a moment to answer. "And that's really none of your..." "Do you live alone?" he repeated, his voice firm but not aggressive. "Yes." He nodded, like I'd just confirmed something he'd already known. "From now on, I need you to text me when you get home at night, just so I know you made it safe." "Marcus, you've worked for me for 4 days. You can't just..." "The silver sedan," he interrupted. "It was parked outside your building last night, same one that was outside the cafe Friday." "Same driver. He's not selling insurance." My anger deflated into something colder. "How do you know where I live?" "Your address is on your business license, posted behind the counter." He took a sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving the street. "And I know because I checked. Someone's watching you, Claire. Someone who knows your routine, your schedule, where you're vulnerable." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was being paranoid, that he was overstepping every possible boundary, but the text message burned in my memory. "Why do you care?" For the first time since I'd met him, Marcus looked uncomfortable. He shifted his weight, and I noticed how his free hand kept clenching and releasing, like he was fighting some internal battle. Because I know what it's like to be hunted, and I know what happens when nobody's watching your back. He walked me to my apartment door, checked the locks, and left without another word. Monday morning, Marcus arrived at the cafe 30 minutes before me. I found him checking all the windows, testing the locks, examining the back entrance I rarely used. When he saw me, he didn't apologize for the presumption. "Back door lock is broken," he said. "Easy to force." "I can fix it if you want, but you should get a deadbolt installed." "Marcus, and you should vary your routine. You come in at the same time every day, leave at the same time. That makes you predictable. Predictable gets you hurt. I set my bag down heavily. You want to tell me what's really going on? Because this feels like more than you noticing a car. He was quiet for a long moment, and I watched him struggle with how much to tell me. Finally, he said, the bodega owner 2 blocks over, Angel, he mentioned someone's been asking about you. Your schedule, whether you have a boyfriend, if you walk home alone. Angel didn't like the questions, so he told the guy you're married to a cop, but the guy kept asking. My stomach dropped. When was this? Last week, before I started working here. Why didn't Angel tell me? He did. Left you a voicemail Wednesday. You didn't call back. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through missed calls. There it was, a number I didn't recognize from 3 days ago. I'd assumed it was spam. The cafe door chimed, and both Marcus and I spun toward it. Just a regular, Mrs. Chen, who came in every Monday for a vanilla latte. But I saw how Marcus had moved instinctively between me and the door, how his body had tensed, ready for threat. Mrs. Chen noticed nothing, ordering her usual and chatting about her grandson. But after she left, I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Who are you, Marcus? Really? He met my eyes, and I saw him making a decision. Someone who made mistakes, bad ones, and learned the hard way how to survive in places where every day someone's deciding if you're a threat or a target. Prison, I said softly. Not a question. He didn't deny it. Yeah. For what? Does it matter? Yes. He turned back to the window, jaw working. Assault. Aggravated battery. I put a man in the hospital and I served every day of my 6-year sentence. Got out 2 months ago. I should have been afraid. Every instinct society had drilled into me said I should fire him, call the police, protect myself from the violent criminal in my cafe. But all I could think was, he's been watching over me. Not because I asked, not because he owed me anything, but because something in him couldn't walk away from someone in danger. Thank you, I whispered. He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. For what? For telling me the truth. And I gestured vaguely. For caring. Even when you didn't have to. The week continued, and Marcus became my shadow. He walked me to my car every night. Texted to make sure I got home safe. Showed up early to check the cafe. Taught me things I'd never thought about. How to notice if someone's following you. Why you should always park under lights. The importance of trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. Thursday night, as I was closing up, my phone buzzed with a text from another unknown number. Tell your guard dog he can't protect you forever. I showed Marcus. His expression darkened, but before he could respond, we heard it. Glass breaking in the back alley. Marcus moved fast, positioning himself between me and the back door. Stay here. Call 911. But when he checked the alley, there was nothing. Just a broken bottle and the lingering sense that someone had been there, watching, waiting, sending a message. That night, my coworker Sarah pulled me aside as she was leaving. Her expression was worried, uncomfortable. Claire, I need to ask you something. Do you know who Marcus is? Like, really know? What do you mean? She pulled out her phone, showing me a news article from 6 years ago. Marcus Walker, assault charges, sentenced to 6 years. There was a mugshot, younger, angrier, but unmistakably him. I know, I said quietly. Sarah's eyes widened. You know? And you still? He told me himself. He's been honest about everything. But do you know what he did? She scrolled to another article, and I felt my blood chill as I read the details. A bar fight that had escalated into brutal violence. A man in a coma for 3 weeks. Testimonies describing Marcus's rage, the way he'd kept hitting even after the guy was down. Sarah touched my arm gently. I'm not saying he hasn't changed. I'm just saying, be careful. Men like that, violence is in them. And it doesn't just go away. After she left, I stood alone in my cafe, staring at the mugshot of the man who'd been protecting me. The same man who fixed wobbly tables and cleaned steam wands with meticulous care. The same man who'd positioned himself between me and danger without hesitation. Who was Marcus Walker? The violent criminal in the articles, or the careful, quiet man who'd shown me nothing but respect? I locked up and headed to my car, and that's when I saw him. Not Marcus, Ryan. my ex-boyfriend, leaning against my driver's side door, smiling like he had every right to be there. "We need to talk," he said. Ryan looked the same as he had 3 months ago when I'd ended things. Handsome in that polished, entitled way that had initially attracted me, now just made me wary. His smile was too wide, his eyes too bright, and he was blocking my car door like he owned it. "If there's nothing to talk about," I said, keeping my voice steady, my keys gripped between my fingers the way Marcus had taught me. "We broke up. It's over." "See, that's where you're wrong, Claire Bear." The old nickname made my skin crawl. "We didn't break up. You got scared of commitment and ran. But I've been patient. I've given you space. And now I think it's time we—" "Ryan, move away from my car." His smile faltered. "Are you seriously telling me?" "She asked you to move." Marcus's voice came from behind me, low and controlled. I hadn't heard him approach, but suddenly he was there, and the air seemed to thicken with tension. Ryan straightened, his expression shifting from confusion to recognition to something uglier. Well, the help. Didn't realize guard dog was part of your job description." "It's not." Marcus moved to stand slightly in front of me, his body language deliberately non-threatening but immovable. "But I'm asking you nicely to step away from her car." "Or what?" Ryan laughed, but there was nervousness underneath it. "You gonna hit me?" "That's what guys like you do, right? When you don't get your way." I saw Marcus's jaw tighten, saw his hands flex once before deliberately relaxing. "No. I'm going to stand here while Claire gets in her car safely, and then I'm going to make sure you understand that showing up uninvited isn't welcome. Claire, you're really going to let this criminal speak for you?" "He's not speaking for me," I said, finding my voice. "He's speaking with me. Now please leave, Orion." Ryan's face flushed. "I know who he is, you know. I know what he did. 6 years for assault. And you're trusting him? You won't return my calls, but you'll hire some violent—" "Stop talking." My voice was sharper than I'd intended. "You need to leave. Now." For a moment, I thought Ryan might escalate. But Marcus remained perfectly still. Not aggressive, not threatening, just present, immovable. After what felt like forever, Ryan backed away, hands up in mock surrender. "Fine. But this isn't over, Claire. You're making a mistake." He looked at Marcus with undisguised hatred. "And you're gonna slip up eventually. Guys like you always do." After Ryan drove away, I realized I was shaking. Marcus waited until my breathing steadied before speaking. "You okay?" "No, yes, I don't know." I looked at him. "How much did you hear?" Enough to know he's not going to stop. We stood in the parking lot, the streetlights casting harsh shadows, and I made a decision. "I read about you tonight. Sarah showed me the articles about what you did." Marcus's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went distant. "Okay. Is it true, the way they described it?" "The facts are true. The context." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I got into a fight in a bar. A guy was laughing about something. I lost control, and I hurt him badly. He survived, but barely. I was arrested, tried, and convicted. I served 6 years at Statesville. No parole, no early release. I did my full sentence." What was he laughing about? Marcus looked surprised by the question. "Does it matter?" "Yes." He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, "My little sister. She died in a car accident when I was 19. Drunk driver, no charges filed because the guy had connections. This man in the bar, 6 years later, he was bragging about getting away with a DUI that killed someone. Different person, different accident. But in that moment, all I saw was the guy who killed Amy, walking free, laughing about it. My heart clenched. Marcus, it doesn't excuse what I did," he continued, his voice flat. "That's what I learned in therapy, in anger management, in 6 years of having nothing to do but think about my choices. My sister would have been horrified by what I did in her name. I dishonored her memory by becoming the kind of person she would have been afraid of. But you've changed." He met my eyes. "I've tried to. Every day, I try to. But that history doesn't go away, Claire. Those articles Sarah showed you, they're real. That man in the mugshot, that's me too. And people like Ryan, people who want to hurt you, they'll use my past to do it. I thought about the past week, how Marcus had watched over me, taught me, protected me without ever asking for anything in return. How his hands, which had once beaten a man nearly to death, now handled espresso cups with such care. I don't need you to be perfect, I said quietly. I need you to be honest, and you have been. So what now? Now we figure out what to do about Ryan, because you're right, he's not going to stop. Over the next few days, I documented everything. The texts, the calls, the times Ryan showed up, coincidentally, where I was. Marcus helped me file for a restraining order, sitting with me in the courthouse, never touching me but somehow making me feel less alone in the fluorescent-lit hallways. The judge granted a temporary order. Ryan was to stay 500 feet away from me, my home, my business. It should have felt like victory. Instead, the threats escalated. More texts from unknown numbers. Photos of me that I hadn't known were being taken. Once, I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. I knew I'd locked it that morning, but there was no sign of forced entry. Nothing missing. Just the violation of knowing someone had been inside. Marcus started sleeping in his car outside my building. I told him he didn't have to, but he said, "I won't sleep anyway. Might as well be useful." One afternoon, during a rare quiet moment at the cafe, I asked him about prison. What was it like? He considered the question carefully. Loud, violent, dehumanizing. Every day was about survival, not dying, but maintaining some sense of self when the system is designed to break you down. You learn to watch everything, trust nothing, and understand that vulnerability gets exploited. Is that why you notice everything? The way you watch the door, check the locks, position yourself? Yeah. In prison, missing details can get you killed. You learn to read body language, anticipate threats, understand power dynamics. It's not something you can turn off when you get out. Do you regret it? Not the crime. I know you regret that. But do you regret what prison made you? Marcus looked at me with something like wonder. That's the first time anyone's asked that question like they want to know the answer. He thought for a moment. I hate what I had to become to survive it. But those skills, that awareness, they're helping me protect you now. So maybe there's redemption in that. Taking the worst parts of my past and using them for something good. That evening, as I was wiping down tables after closing, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Claire. Ryan's voice was slurred, angry. You got a restraining order, really. After everything I did for you. Ryan, you're violating the order by calling. I don't care about the order. You chose that criminal over me. You let him touch you, protect you, when I'm the one who loves you. Ryan, I'm hanging up. He's using you. Can't you see that? Guys like him, they don't change. They pretend, they manipulate, and then one day you'll do something that pisses him off and he'll show you who he really is. Just like he did to that guy in the bar. Goodbye, Ryan. Wait, just meet me. One time, let me explain. Let me show you that I'm the right choice. If you don't, I can't be responsible for what happens. To you, to your cafe, to your criminal boyfriend. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, and realized with cold certainty that this was bigger than an ex-boyfriend who couldn't let go. Ryan wasn't just obsessed. He was dangerous. Marcus emerged from the back. Claire, what's wrong? I told him about the call, watching his expression darken with each detail. When I finished, he said, "We need to go to the police. That's a clear threat." It's his word against mine. No recording, no proof. Then we make proof. We document everything. The cafe window shattered. Glass exploded inward, and Marcus moved faster than I thought possible, pulling me down behind the counter as a brick landed where I'd been standing. Wrapped around it was a note written in familiar handwriting. Last warning. Send him away, or I'll send him back to prison myself. Marcus called 911 while I sat there, shaking, staring at the broken glass that glittered in the overhead lights like scattered diamonds. The police came, took statements, added the incident to Ryan's violations. But as they were leaving, one officer pulled Marcus aside. I couldn't hear what they said, but I saw Marcus's expression go carefully blank, saw him nod once, then watch the officer leave. What did he say? I asked. Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. Someone filed a complaint, claiming I threatened Ryan last week in the parking lot. It's not true, but But what? But my parole officer has to investigate any accusation, which means I have to go in for questioning tomorrow. Finally, he looked at me, and I saw the fear he'd been hiding. If they believe him, if they think I'm violating parole, they can send me back, and I can't protect you from inside. The parole office smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. I sat in the waiting room while Marcus met with his parole officer, watching people shuffle in and out, men and women marked by the system, trying to navigate a world that had moved on without them. When Marcus emerged 40 minutes later, he looked exhausted. They're investigating. Ryan filed a formal complaint with witnesses who will say they saw me threaten him. The witnesses are lying, but your word against theirs. Ex-con versus upstanding citizen? Not great odds. He rubbed his face. My parole officer is fair, but she has to follow protocol. Until this is resolved, I'm supposed to maintain minimal contact with anyone involved in the complaint. My stomach dropped. That means me. Yeah. We stood in the gray hallway of the parole office, and I saw the weight he carried. Not just his past, but the fragility of his present. One accusation, true or not, could erase everything he'd built. His freedom, his job, his chance at redemption. I'm not staying away from you, I said firmly. Claire? No. Ryan's trying to isolate me by threatening you. If you back away, he wins. We deal with this together. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. Okay, but we do this smart. Everything documented, witnesses present, no mistakes. Over the next week, Marcus taught me more about protecting myself than I'd learned in 30 years. Not just physical safety, though we practiced that too, but mental awareness. How to vary my routine without looking like I was hiding. How to notice surveillance. How to make myself a harder target. But we also talked. Real conversations during slow afternoons at the cafe, after the lunch rush faded and before dinner prep began. Marcus told me about his life before prison, the little sister he'd adored, his mother who'd died of cancer, his father who'd disappeared when he was 12, how Amy's death had shattered what remained of his family, how he'd spiraled into rage and self-destruction until that night in the bar gave him a target for all his grief. Prison saved my life, he said one day, and when I looked shocked, he explained, not because of the system's broken, but because it forced me to stop, to be still, to face what I'd been running from. I had therapy, anger management, education programs. I read hundreds of books. I learned that grief doesn't justify violence, and rage only destroys the person holding it. What about after you got out? His expression grew complicated. Harder than prison in some ways. At least inside, Wade, everyone's in the same situation. Outside, you're marked. Applications ask if you've been convicted of a felony. Landlords run background checks. People see the tattoos, the scars, and they've already decided who you are. But you're rebuilding. I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat. I work for you, which is the first legitimate job I've had since before prison. I see my parole officer weekly, attend mandatory therapy, and try to prove every day that I'm not the man I was. I reached across the counter and touched his hand. His skin was warm, calloused from work, and he looked at our joined hands like he'd forgotten what gentle contact felt like. Thank you for telling me, I said. And thank you for not pretending it's easy. He turned his hand over, carefully, giving me the chance to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers closed gently around mine. Thank you for not running. The bell over the door chimed, and we separated naturally. But something had shifted between us. Something neither of us was ready to name, but both of us felt. That night, after closing, Marcus walked me to my car as usual. But instead of just watching me drive away, he said, "Can I show you something?" We drove in separate cars to a small park near the river. The sun was setting, painting the water gold and orange, and Marcus led me to a bench with a clear view. I come here sometimes, he said, sitting down, when everything feels too heavy, when I start thinking about all the time I lost, all the mistakes I can't undo. This place reminds me that the world keeps moving. That beauty still exists even when you feel like you don't deserve to see it. We sat in comfortable silence, watching joggers pass, dogs chasing tennis balls, couples walking hand in hand. Normal life, continuing around us. Marcus, I said quietly, can I ask you something? Always, That night in the bar, do you remember the moment you could have stopped before it went too far? He was quiet for so long I thought I'd overstepped. Then, yeah, I remember. He was already down, already hurt, and something in my head was screaming to stop, that I'd made my point, but the anger was louder, the grief was louder, and I kept going. Do you think about it a lot? Every day, every time I make a fist, every time someone gets aggressive, every time I feel that old rage trying to surface. I think about that moment I could have stopped and didn't, and I choose differently now. I believed him. Not because he was perfect, but because I'd watched him choose restraint over reaction, strategy over violence, again and again. He'd been tested, by Ryan, by his circumstances, by the system, and each time, he'd proven he'd changed. The following morning, everything went wrong. I arrived at the cafe to find the front window boarded up. We'd had it replaced after Ryan's brick, but now someone had spray painted across the plywood. Criminal lover. Inside, the locks had been changed. I couldn't get in. Marcus arrived minutes later, taking in the scene with controlled fury. Stay here. He checked the back entrance and returned, his expression grim. Back door's been forced. Someone was inside. We called the police again. They documented everything, but I could see the calculation in their eyes. Was this really about Ryan? Or was Marcus somehow involved? Ex-cons didn't get the benefit of the doubt. After they left, a man approached us. Tall, heavily tattooed, moving with the careful awareness of someone who'd done time. He looked at Marcus with recognition. Marcus Walker, heard you were out. Marcus's entire body tensed. Tommy. Tommy smiled without warmth. We need to talk. About old debts. I don't owe you anything. See, that's where you're wrong, brother. Protection inside doesn't come free. You remember what we agreed? His eyes slid to me. Nice setup you got here. Be a shame if something happened to it, or to your pretty little employer. Marcus moved between us instinctively. Leave, now. Tommy held up his hands, backing away. I'll be in touch, soon. After he left, I asked the obvious question. Who was that? Marcus looked at me with the kind of exhaustion that went deeper than physical tiredness. Someone from my past, someone I hoped I'd never see again. What does he want? Payback. In prison, you don't survive alone. You make alliances, accept protection, and eventually, those debts come due. He rubbed his face. I need to handle this. But I need you to promise me something. What? If this goes sideways, if I end up back inside, you walk away. You sell the cafe if you have to. You move. You start over somewhere Ryan and Tommy can't find you. Marcus, promise me, Claire. Because loving me means accepting that my past will always be part of our story, and I won't let that destroy you. Loving him. He'd said it so casually, like it was already an accepted truth. And maybe it was. Maybe I'd been falling for him since that first morning when he'd stood in my cafe with his plastic-sleeved resume, waiting without expectation. Maybe I'd been lost since the moment he'd chosen to protect me without asking for anything in return. I'm not walking away, I said firmly. We're in this together. That night, my phone rang. Marcus's name on the screen. Don't come to your apartment, he said without preamble. Ryan's there. How do you know? Because I've been watching your building, and he just went inside 5 minutes ago. I was already turning my car around. Did you call the police? They're on their way. But Claire, there's something else. Tommy contacted my parole officer. He's claiming I'm planning to violate parole, that I'm involved in criminal activity. It's a lie, but it's another accusation. Yeah. And this time, my parole officer isn't sure she believes me. The police arrested Ryan in my apartment. They found him going through my things, photos of me spread across my bed, a duffel bag full of items he'd stolen over weeks of breaking in, my mail, old journals, clothing. Evidence of an obsession that had escalated far beyond what I'd understood. But the relief of Ryan's arrest was short-lived. The next morning, Marcus's parole officer called an emergency meeting. I drove Marcus to the office, his silence heavy with resignation. You don't have to come in, he said as we parked. Yes, I do. Officer Patricia Vega was a woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She looked at both of us with the exhausted expression of someone who'd heard every story, every excuse, every lie. "Mr. Walker," she began, "I've received 3 separate complaints this week. One from Ryan Mitchell claiming you threatened him, one from Thomas Chen claiming you're involved in criminal activity, and one from an anonymous source claiming you've been stalking Ms. Reeves." "That's not true," I interrupted. "None of it is true." Officer Vega held up a hand. "I believe you, Ms. Reeves, but my job isn't about what I believe. It's about investigating claims and ensuring parolees comply with their conditions. And right now, Marcus is under scrutiny that could result in parole violation charges." "Tommy Chen is lying," Marcus said calmly. "He's trying to force me back into criminal activity by threatening my parole, and I won't do it." "What does he want?" Marcus hesitated, and I saw him calculating how much to reveal. "Finally, in prison, Tommy ran a protection racket. I accepted his help early on when I didn't understand how things worked. In exchange, I promised to do a job for him once I got out. I've been refusing, so now he's using my parole as leverage." "What kind of job?" "Moving packages, probably drugs, maybe weapons. I didn't ask for details because I'm not doing it." Officer Vega made notes. "You understand that even associating with Tommy Chen violates your parole conditions? No contact with known criminals is explicit in your release terms." "He approached me. I didn't seek him out." "Doesn't matter. The violation is the contact itself." She leaned back. "Here's your situation, Marcus. You've got multiple complaints, you've been in contact with a known criminal, and you're involved with a woman who's being stalked by her ex-boyfriend. From the parole board's perspective, you're either a victim of circumstance or a liar who's back to old patterns. I have to determine which. What do I need to do to prove I've changed? Stay away from Tommy Chen. Stay away from Ryan Mitchell. Document everything. And frankly, consider distancing yourself from Mrs. Reeves until this is resolved." "No," Marcus and I said simultaneously. Officer Vega sighed. "Then you're making this harder than it needs to be." After the meeting, we sat in my car, both of us processing what we'd heard. "She's right," Marcus said quietly. "I'm making your life harder. Ryan's using me to get to you. Tommy's using you to get to me. And I'm the connection point that's putting you in danger. Stop it. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? If you'd never hired me, none of this would be happening." I turned to face him fully. "If I'd never hired you, I'd be dealing with Ryan alone. I'd be terrified, isolated, and probably hurt by now. You've kept me safe, Marcus. Not endangered me. Safe? Your cafe has been vandalized, your apartment violated, and your life is being threatened. How is that safe?" "Because I'm not facing it alone." My voice rose despite myself. "For the first time in my life, someone's standing beside me. Someone who sees me, protects me, and doesn't ask for anything except permission to care. So no, I'm not walking away, and you don't get to make that choice for me." Marcus looked at me like I'd surprised him. "You're stubborn." "I'm committed. There's a difference." That afternoon, Tommy showed up at the cafe during lunch rush. He didn't threaten, didn't make a scene, just sat at the counter, ordered coffee, and smiled at Marcus with cold promise. "Time's running out, brother," he said pleasantly. "My people are getting impatient. You know what happens when people get impatient. I'm not doing your job, Tommy. Not even to keep your pretty little cafe owner safe. Because accidents happen, buildings catch fire, people get hurt. Would be tragic if something happened to her because you were too stubborn to help out old friends." I was taking an order at the far end of the counter, but I heard every word, and I saw Marcus's hands grip the edge of the counter, saw his jaw clench, saw the war happening inside him, every instinct screaming to protect me, every value he'd rebuilt telling him not to become that person again. "Leave," Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet, "and don't come back." Tommy stood, leaving exact change for his coffee. "You've got 72 hours. Then we collect, one way or another." After he left, I closed the cafe early. We needed to think, to plan, to figure out how to fight back without giving Tommy what he wanted or violating Marcus's parole. "What happens if you do the job?" I asked. "I go back to prison. Moving illegal packages is a felony, and I'd be violating every condition of my parole. Plus, it doesn't end. Do one job, they own you. There's always another job, another threat, another reason you can't walk away. What if we go to the police? And tell them what? That a guy asked me to do something illegal and I said no. They can't arrest him for that. And if I'm the one making accusations, who do you think they'll believe? The ex-con or the upstanding citizen? We sat in the empty cafe, the afternoon light slanting through the boarded-up window, and I realized we were trapped. Every move we made gave someone leverage. Every choice risked something precious. There has to be a way, I said. Some option we're not seeing. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, maybe there is, but it's risky. And it requires trusting people who have no reason to trust me. What are you thinking? The police can't arrest Tommy for offering me a job, but they can arrest him if he's caught actually moving illegal packages. If I could get information about his operation, locations, times, what's being moved, and give that to the police, they could bust him without me being involved. That's incredibly dangerous. Yeah, but it gets him off our backs and keeps me out of prison. What do you need? He looked at me seriously. I need you to trust me, and I need you to be ready to run if this goes wrong. Over the next 2 days, Marcus did something I didn't fully understand. He made calls to people from his past, other ex-cons, people he'd known inside, contacts who owed him favors. He was building information, piecing together Tommy's operation, finding weaknesses. Meanwhile, Ryan's arrest gave me breathing room but not security. He made bail within 24 hours, and despite the restraining order, I knew he wasn't done. Men like Ryan didn't accept defeat. They escalated. On the 3rd day, Marcus came to me with a plan. Tommy's moving a shipment tomorrow night. I know when, I know where, and I know what's in it. Enough drugs and illegal weapons to put him away for decades. How did you find out? Called in every favor I had. People who owe me, people who hate Tommy, people who understand that guys like him make life harder for everyone trying to stay clean. He paused. But there's a problem. What? I have to be the one to give the police this information, which means I have to explain how I got it, which means revealing I have connections to criminals, which could violate my parole. So, you risk your freedom to stop Tommy? I risk my freedom to protect you, and to prove that I'm not the man I was, that I'd rather go back to prison doing the right thing than stay free by doing nothing. I thought about Officer Vega's words, that she had to determine if Marcus was a victim of circumstance or a liar returning to old patterns. This would give her the answer. Either Marcus was using his past for redemption, or he was still part of the problem. What do you need from me? I asked. Stay somewhere safe tomorrow night, somewhere Tommy can't find you, because if this goes wrong, he'll retaliate, and I won't be able to stop him from prison. Marcus, promise me, Claire, promise you'll be safe. I wanted to argue, to insist I stay by his side, but I saw the fear in his eyes. Not for himself, but for me. And I realized that loving someone meant sometimes honoring their need to protect you, even when you wanted to protect them. I promise. The next day felt endless. Marcus went to the police station that morning and told them everything. I don't know what he said, what evidence he provided, or how Officer Vega reacted. But that afternoon, he texted me. It's done. Police are moving tonight. Stay away from the cafe and your apartment. I checked into a hotel across town using cash, not telling anyone where I was, and I waited. At midnight, my phone rang. Officer Vega's number. Ms. Reeves, this is Officer Vega. I'm calling to let you know that Thomas Chen and 6 associates were arrested tonight in a major drug and weapons bust. Your cafe and your person are no longer under threat from his organization. Relief flooded through me. And Marcus? There was a long pause. Mr. Walker's cooperation was instrumental in this arrest. However, his contact with known criminals and his knowledge of criminal activity raises serious questions about his compliance with parole conditions. There will be a hearing to determine if his actions constitute a violation. But he helped you. He did the right thing. I know, Mrs. Reeves, and I'll be advocating for that at the hearing. But the decision isn't mine alone. Another pause. He asked me to tell you something. He said, "Thank you for seeing who I'm trying to be." The line went dead. I sat in that anonymous hotel room, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I cried. Not from fear or relief, but from the unfairness of a system that punished people for trying to change. Marcus had risked everything to do the right thing, and he might lose his freedom because of it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your guard dog can't protect you from prison. You should have chosen me when you had the chance. Ryan." The parole hearing was scheduled for Monday morning. I spent the weekend gathering character witnesses, documenting everything Marcus had done for me, and preparing testimony that would show his actions as proof of rehabilitation, not continued criminal behavior. Sarah, my coworker, helped despite her initial reservations. I judged him, she admitted as we organized documents. I saw his past and assumed he hadn't changed. But watching how he protected you, how he chose to help the police instead of save himself, I was wrong. Mrs. Chen, the regular customer, wrote a letter describing how Marcus had helped her carry groceries, fixed her grandson's bicycle, and treated her with respect. People make mistakes, she wrote, but this young man has worked hard to become better. That should count for something. Even Angel, the bodega owner, came forward with testimony about how Marcus had asked questions about safety in the neighborhood, had been genuinely concerned about local residents, had warned him about Tommy Chen before the arrest. But the person who mattered most was Officer Vega. On Sunday evening, she called me. Miss Reeves, I need to be honest with you. The parole board isn't impressed by character witnesses. They're looking at facts. Marcus maintained contact with a known criminal. He possessed knowledge of illegal activity, and he didn't report it immediately. He was gathering evidence to help you. I know, and I believe his intentions were good, but the board has to consider whether allowing this sets a precedent. Can every parolee claim they're helping police while maintaining criminal contacts? It's complicated. What will you recommend? That his parole be maintained with additional restrictions, more frequent check-ins, mandatory therapy sessions, and complete documentation of his movements. It's a middle ground, acknowledging he did the right thing while recognizing he put himself in violation to do it. And if the board disagrees, then Marcus goes back to prison. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. Monday morning, I stood outside the courthouse, waiting for Marcus to arrive. When he did, I barely recognized him. He was wearing dress pants and a button-down shirt that was slightly too large, probably borrowed. His tattoos were covered, his head freshly shaved, and he moved with the careful dignity of someone who understood this might be his last day of freedom. Hey, he said softly. Hey. I wanted to hug him, to hold him, to tell him everything would be okay. But I didn't know if that was true. The hearing room was smaller than I expected. The parole board consisted of 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, who looked at Marcus with the neutral expression of judges who'd seen everything and been impressed by nothing. They reviewed his case systematically. His original crime, his behavior in prison, his compliance since release, the recent incidents. Then they called witnesses. I testified first, explaining how Marcus had protected me, had refused Tommy's demands, had chosen to help law enforcement despite the personal cost. The board listened without reaction. Officer Vega testified next, presenting her findings. Mr. Walker was in contact with Thomas Chen, a known criminal. However, this contact was not initiated by Mr. Walker, and he used the situation to assist law enforcement in dismantling a significant criminal operation. He showed judgment, restraint, and a commitment to doing the right thing even at personal risk. In my professional opinion, his actions demonstrate successful rehabilitation, not recidivism. Then Tommy Chen's public defender spoke, arguing that Marcus had set him up, that the whole arrest was a personal vendetta, that Marcus had been the real criminal all along. The parole board made notes, asked questions, and revealed nothing. Finally, they asked Marcus to speak. He stood, and I saw him take a moment to compose himself. When he spoke, his voice was steady but emotional. 6 years ago, I nearly killed a man because I couldn't control my anger. I blamed the world for my pain, and I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. I was sentenced to 6 years, and I served every day. Not because I had to, because I needed to. I needed to understand why I'd become that person and how to never be him again. Since my release, I've worked hard to rebuild my life. I've attended every therapy session, every check-in, every requirement of my parole. I got a job with someone who took a chance on me when no one else would. And when my past came back, when Tommy Chen threatened that person I care about, I had a choice. I could give in to his demands and stay safe. Or I could do the right thing and risk everything I'd built. I chose to help the police because that's who I am now. Not the angry kid who lost control in a bar, not the convict who survived by making compromises. I'm someone who understands that second chances come with responsibility. And I won't dishonor the people who believed in me by taking the easy way out. If you revoke my parole, I understand. I broke the rules, even if my intentions were good. But I want you to know that I'm not the same man who entered prison 6 years ago. I've changed, and I'll keep changing, whether I do it here or back inside. The room was silent after he finished. The parole board conferred in whispers, and then the chairwoman spoke. Mr. Walker, your case is unusual. You violated the technical conditions of your parole by maintaining contact with a known criminal. However, your cooperation with law enforcement and your demonstrated commitment to public safety complicate the standard interpretation. We're going to deliberate and provide our decision within 48 hours. Until then, you remain on parole under current conditions. It wasn't yes, but it wasn't no. It was uncertainty, suspended in time. Outside the courthouse, Marcus turned to me. You should prepare yourself for the possibility that I'm going back. Don't say that. Claire, I need you to hear this. If I go back, you can't wait for me. You can't put your life on hold for someone who might not get out for years. You need to move on. Build your business. Find someone who can give you a normal life. I don't want normal. I want you. He touched my face gently, his rough palm against my cheek. You deserve better than a man whose past keeps threatening your present. I deserve to make my own choices, and I choose you. We stood on the courthouse steps, and I saw the moment he let himself believe me. Let himself hope that maybe, despite everything, we could have a future. That night, Ryan struck again. I was closing the cafe when my phone rang. A blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Claire Bear? Ryan's voice was slurred, drunk or high or both. Did your criminal boyfriend get sent back to prison yet? Leave me alone, Ryan. I can't. See, I love you. And love means not giving up, even when you make stupid choices, even when you choose thugs over good men, even when you need to be saved from yourself. Ryan, you're drunk. Hang up and go home. I am home. You're home. He laughed. Remember when you gave me a key? You never asked for it back, so technically, I'm not breaking in. I'm just visiting. My blood ran cold. Get out of my apartment. Come make me, but leave the criminal at home. This is between you and me. He hung up. I immediately called the police, then called Marcus. Ryan's in my apartment again. Police are on their way, but where are you? At the cafe. Stay there. Lock the doors. I'm coming. Marcus, if you confront Ryan, if anything happens, the parole board. I don't care. I'm not letting you face him alone. 10 minutes later, Marcus arrived, and we drove together to my apartment. Police cars were already there, lights flashing. Officers were leading Ryan out in handcuffs, and he was screaming, fighting, completely unhinged. When he saw me, his expression twisted with rage and something uglier. This is your fault. All of it. You made me like this. I was good to you, and you threw me away for a convict. One of the officers pushed him into the car, but Ryan kept screaming through the window. He's going back to prison, and when he does, I'll still be here. I'll always be here. An officer approached us. Ms. Reeves, we found evidence of extended stalking, photos, surveillance equipment, journals documenting your movements. This is far beyond a restraining order violation. The DA is going to push for serious charges. How long has he been doing this? Based on what we found, at least 6 months. Some of these photos predate your breakup. I felt sick. All this time, I'd thought Ryan was just a possessive ex. But he'd been obsessed long before I'd tried to end things. I'd never actually been safe. Marcus stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder, solid and steady, and I realized he'd seen it. From the beginning, he'd recognized Ryan's obsession as dangerous because he'd learned to recognize threats. His past, the thing everyone said made him dangerous, had actually saved me. That night, as we stood in my apartment, police tape across the door, evidence bags being carried out, my privacy violated in a dozen ways. Marcus said quietly, "This is what I bring to your life. Danger, chaos, police investigations." "No," I corrected. "This is what Ryan brought to my life. You brought safety, protection, and someone who saw me when I was invisible to everyone else." He pulled me into his arms and I felt him shaking. I was so scared I'd lose you, that I wouldn't be enough, wouldn't be fast enough, wouldn't be able to protect you. You did protect me. You are protecting me. And I trust you, Marcus. Completely. We stood like that, holding each other in my violated apartment. And I understood that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, about choosing each other when the world said you shouldn't, about believing in redemption even when the cost was high. 2 days later, the parole board's decision arrived. Marcus called me from Officer Vega's office. I could hear it in his voice before he said the words, "They're revoking my parole. I have 72 hours before I have to report back." I refused to accept it. For 2 days, I made calls, sent emails, contacted lawyers, and researched precedents. Marcus told me to stop, that the decision was final, that I needed to let him go. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. Because somewhere in those 2 days of frantic research, I found something. A pattern. Tommy Chen's arrest had been too easy, the evidence too clean, the timing too perfect. And when I dug deeper, I found connections I hadn't expected. Tommy's public defender was Ryan's cousin. The anonymous complaint about Marcus stalking me had come from an IP address registered to Ryan's workplace. The witnesses who claimed Marcus threatened Ryan all had records, all had connections to Tommy's organization. Ryan and Tommy hadn't just been working against us separately. They'd been coordinating. Ryan's obsession with me had given them the perfect cover to manipulate Marcus back into criminal activity, or, failing that, to get his parole revoked through false accusations. I brought everything to Officer Vega on the morning of Marcus's 3rd day of freedom. "Look at this," I said, spreading documents across her desk. The timeline, the connections, the coordination. Ryan and Tommy planned this together. Every accusation, every incident, was designed to either force Marcus to violate parole or to convince you he was lying about his rehabilitation. Officer Vega studied the documents carefully. This is circumstantial, suggestive, but not proof. Then let's get proof. Ryan's in jail, but he's still making calls. His phone records would show contact with Tommy's lawyer, with the false witnesses. And Tommy's operation, the arrest reports would show if any evidence was planted or manipulated. "Ms. Reeves, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but the parole board has made their decision. Based on false information, Marcus didn't seek out Tommy. Tommy and Ryan conspired to use him. Everything that's happened has been orchestrated to destroy the life he's rebuilt. And if you revoke his parole based on their lies, then the system isn't about rehabilitation. It's about punishment that never ends." Officer Vega looked at me for a long moment. "You really believe in him?" "I know him. And I know the difference between someone who's pretending to change and someone who's actually doing the work. Marcus is doing the work. He deserves a real second chance, not one that can be destroyed by people with grudges." She was quiet, thinking. Then, "Give me 24 hours. I'll look into these connections. But I can't promise anything. The board's decision stands unless we can prove fraud." I left her office and went straight to the jail where Ryan was being held. I'd requested a visitor meeting, claiming I needed closure. They approved it, probably hoping I'd provide testimony against him. Ryan looked terrible, disheveled, manic, the polish completely gone. When he saw me through the glass, he smiled. "Knew you'd come. Knew you couldn't stay away." I picked up the phone. "I need to know why." "Why what?" "Why you worked with Tommy Chen to destroy Marcus. Why you coordinated everything. Why you couldn't just let me go." His smile faltered. "I don't know what your cousin is Tommy's lawyer. Your IP address filed the anonymous complaint. Your witnesses all have connections to Tommy's organization. I know everything, Ryan. I just need to understand why." He stared at me, and something in his expression shifted. The mask cracked, and underneath was something wounded and twisted. "Because you chose him, a criminal, a violent thug, over me, over everything we had. We didn't have anything real. You were obsessed, not in love." "I loved you," he shouted, loud enough that guards looked over. He lowered his voice. "I loved you, and you threw me away like I meant nothing. So yeah, when I met Tommy's cousin at a bar and we got talking, and I found out his client needed leverage against Marcus Walker, it felt like fate, like the universe giving me a way to show you who Marcus really was. You framed him. I exposed him. He's a criminal, Claire, always will be, and now he's going back where he belongs, and you'll finally see that I was right." I leaned forward. "No, Ryan. What I see is a man so broken by rejection that he'd destroy an innocent person to feel powerful. Marcus made a mistake once. You've made one every day for months. And the difference is, he's tried to change. You haven't. I hung up the phone and left, Ryan's shouts following me down the corridor. That night, Officer Vega called. I pulled phone records, cross-referenced witness statements, and contacted the DA handling Ryan's case. You were right. There's clear evidence of coordination between Ryan Mitchell and Thomas Chen to frame Marcus Walker. False witnesses, planted evidence, manufactured complaints. It's all there. What does that mean for Marcus? I'm filing for an emergency review with the parole board. With this evidence, his parole revocation should be overturned. But Claire, this kind of appeal takes time. Marcus still has to report to prison tomorrow morning. We might not get the review processed before then. So he goes back, even though he's innocent? I'm doing everything I can, but the system moves slowly. I hung up and immediately called Marcus. Where are you? Packing. His voice was resigned. I report in 12 hours. I found proof. Ryan and Tommy coordinated everything. Officer Vega is filing for an emergency review. There was silence on the line. Then, Claire, don't get your hopes up. Even with proof, the wheels of justice turn slowly. I'll probably be inside for weeks or months before any review happens. Then we fight. We fight until you're free. I need you to promise me something. His voice was rough with emotion. Promise you'll live your life, run your cafe, make your art, be happy. Don't put everything on hold waiting for a system that might never work in my favor. I promise I'll fight for you every single day. That's the only promise I'm making. The next morning, I stood outside the Department of Corrections intake facility, waiting for Marcus to arrive for processing. When he pulled up, he looked surprised to see me. You shouldn't be here, he said. Where else would I be? He held me for a long moment, and I memorized everything. The feel of his arms, the sound of his heartbeat, the way he smelled like coffee and determination. Thank you, he whispered, for seeing me, for believing in me, for fighting when I couldn't fight anymore. I love you, I said, finally giving voice to what I'd known for weeks. And I'm not giving up on us. He pulled back, looking at me with wonder. I love you too. Have since the day you took a chance on a stranger with a plastic-sleeved resume. Before he could enter the building, a car pulled up fast. Officer Vega jumped out, waving papers. Stop! Emergency stay of execution granted by the parole board. She ran toward us, breathless. The board reviewed the evidence overnight. They're overturning the parole revocation pending full investigation. Marcus, you're not going back. The relief was so sudden, so complete, that my knees nearly gave out. Marcus caught me, and we held each other while Officer Vega explained. The DA is adding conspiracy charges to Ryan Mitchell's case. Tommy Chen's facing additional charges for witness tampering and fraud, and the parole board is issuing a formal apology for the wrongful revocation order. She smiled. You're free, Marcus. Actually free. The weeks that followed felt like learning to breathe again. Ryan and Tommy both faced serious charges. The DA was pushing for maximum sentences, and the evidence I'd gathered became central to the prosecution's case. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt safe walking to my car, sleeping in my apartment, living my life. Marcus continued working at the cafe, but something had shifted. Not between us, that had only grown stronger, but in how the world saw him. The local paper ran a story about the conspiracy to frame him, about his cooperation with law enforcement, about his commitment to rehabilitation despite systematic obstacles. Customers started recognizing him not as the ex-con, but as the man who did the right thing. Mrs. Chen brought her entire family in for coffee, introducing Marcus to her grandson as someone who shows us that people can change. Other business owners in the neighborhood stopped by to meet him, to hear his story, to offer support. Slowly, he was becoming part of the community rather than an outsider. But the real change came 3 months later. I was closing the cafe one evening when Marcus said, "Can we talk?" My heart jumped. Those words usually meant bad news. But when I looked at him, I saw nervousness, not fear. "I've been thinking," he began, "about what comes next. I'll always be grateful to you for giving me a chance. But working for you, it's not what I want long term." My stomach dropped. "You're quitting?" "No. I'm proposing. At my expression, he quickly clarified. A business proposal. Not, well, maybe someday, but not right now. I'm talking about partnership. He pulled out a folder containing a business plan, financial projections, and concept sketches. I want to open a second location, a cafe that specifically hires people with records. Ex-cons, people in recovery, anyone society has written off. I want to create a place where second chances aren't just words. They're the business model. I stared at the documents, at the careful planning, at the vision of what could be. This is incredible. I've been saving every penny since I got out. I've got enough for a small space, used equipment, basic startup costs, but I need a partner, someone who understands the business, who believes in the mission, He paused. Who believes in me? Yes, I said immediately. You didn't even look at the numbers. I don't need to. I believe in you. I believe in this. And I want to build it together. His smile was pure joy. Really? Really? On one condition. What's that? We call it Second Chances Cafe because that's what this is. That's what you've given me and what we're giving others. Over the next 6 months, we built it together. We found a small space in a neighborhood that needed revitalization. We renovated it ourselves. Marcus teaching me construction skills he'd learned in prison vocational programs. We hired our first employee, a woman named Deshawn who'd served time for drug possession and couldn't find work anywhere else. The day we opened, the line stretched around the block. Some people came to support the mission, others came out of curiosity. But they stayed because the coffee was excellent, the service was genuine, and the atmosphere was unlike anything else in Portland. I watched Marcus train Deshawn with the same patience and care he'd shown me. Watched him handle difficult customers with calm professionalism. Watched him mentor other ex-cons who came looking for hope and found it in a cafe that said, "Your past doesn't define your future." My parents finally came to visit 6 months after opening. My father shook Marcus's hand, a genuine gesture of respect, and said, "You've built something good here." My mother pulled me aside. "I was wrong about him, about you. You saw something the rest of us couldn't, and you were brave enough to fight for it. I'm proud of you." Officer Vega stopped by regularly, bringing parole clients who needed job leads and hope. "You're changing lives," she told Marcus. "Not just the people you hire, but everyone who sees that rehabilitation can actually work." 1 year after Marcus walked into my original cafe asking for a job, we stood together in front of Second Chances, watching customers come and go. The cafe was thriving. We'd hired 6 people with records, all of whom were excelling. The neighborhood had embraced us, and Marcus's story had inspired other businesses to consider second chance hiring. You know what's funny?" Marcus said, his arm around my waist. "What?" "A year ago, I thought my life was over, that I'd serve my time, get out, and just survive. I never imagined I'd have this. A business, a purpose, a future. You." I leaned into him. "You gave yourself this. I just gave you a chance to show everyone else what I already saw." "What's that?" "That redemption isn't something someone gives you. It's something you choose. Every day, with every decision, with every action. You chose it, and you keep choosing it." He kissed my forehead. "We should probably make this official." "The business? We already signed the partnership papers." "No." He turned to face me fully. "Us. I know it's only been a year, and I know I'm still rebuilding my life. But Claire, I love you. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that people can change, starting by being the man you deserve." It wasn't a proposal. Not yet. But it was a promise. And sometimes promises matter more than rings. "I love you too," I said. "And we've got time. Time to build this business, to support our employees, to create more second chances. Together." We stood there in front of our cafe, watching the evening crowd. And I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The fear, the danger, the fight, the love, every moment of doubt that had been answered with choice. Every obstacle that had been overcome with determination. Marcus squeezed my hand. "You ready to close up?" I smiled. "Actually, I think we should stay open an extra hour. There's someone at the door who looks like they could use some coffee and conversation." A young man stood outside, resume in hand, tattoos visible on his forearms, waiting with the same patient hopelessness Marcus had carried a year ago. Marcus saw him and nodded. I'll go talk to him, he said. We'll go talk to him, I corrected. Because that was the point, wasn't it? Second chances weren't something one person gave another. They were something we created together. One conversation at a time, one hire at a time, one moment of grace at a time. Marcus and I walked to the door together, ready to change another life the way ours had been changed. Ready to prove, once again, that redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building a future worth believing in. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. And click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.